All right, guys, I'm just getting set up here, and I got a good one going for you guys. I'm really percolating today, so let's see what I whip up, man. But I really want to get into, the boys' new season is going to be coming up pretty soon. I think we've got a couple of weeks out, so I wanted to talk about just the boys in general, not necessarily even the boys. This is not more character talk. I'm not getting ready to do that, right? What we are getting ready to do is to break down the all the machinations that got the boys to this point. Like everybody, we're talking about, Stan Edgar. We're talking about the foundation of what the entire ecosystem is, because they do a pretty insidious job of just kind of building out a whole myth system, right? It's got gods, it's got controllers, it's got everything. And I wanted to take a look at it from that standpoint, just to give it its due, right? Let's give it its due in terms of a series. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to come in here. I'm just kind of checking the channel to make sure that everything is right with my audio stuff. I don't know why you're not trying to come on, but we're going to start off by kind of talking about this gentleman up above me here, which of course, that's Frederick Vought, right? And we know this guy because he's the most talked about one on the show. And he is really, honestly, the like, I almost want to call him like Prometheus, right? Like, think about what he does. This was literally a Nazi scientist. They're not even being like subtle about it in any way, right? And this goes back. Now, this will be a whole conversation, not even being about how prevalent World War II has been on a huge amount of our media and stuff like that, right? How far we've taken this stuff. Like, so much in our storytelling is based on World War II, and I can understand why. So before this was like gods on billboards, before Homelander, before any of this, there was this Nazi doctor with a camp, and he had just the rights to do what he wanted because they were trying to develop a super soldier, right? So we're talking way back, man. This is like 1910 to 1930s. This guy it's like a rising star as a geneticist in Germany at this time. He was educated in Munich, right? This guy, he was rising in the early 20th century as a brilliant mind in genetics. He joins the Nazi Party, which is very important, right? He joins the Nazi Party. He wasn't just someone that was caught up in the mechanisms of the Nazi Party. This was a guy who at his core believed the virtues of the Nazi Party. That's going to be important to know who he was. He was like seriously hardcore invested in this. This wasn't just something that happened. Okay, so he signs up, and now you've got this whole thing that starts to develop, from him. So by the time World War II is really getting hot, he's already fully aligned with this ideology that they're putting out, right? Like, some humans are just more valuable than others, right? So, and he wants that. And obviously they're about spreading their empire. So this is the soil that Compound V grows out of. This need to dominate, this ideology of, some humans are going to be better, so those other humans have to die. So we go back, and then we're talking about his first laboratory, and this is back in 1939, right? So Adolf Hitler personally, the top dog, personally appoints him as the chief physician at this Dachau concentration camp. Obviously, this place was not about healing anybody. What this gave him, disgustingly enough, right, is unlimited access to prisoners. So any Jews that they had got caught up in there, any Roma, political prisoners, POWs, anything like that. So you had a steady stream of test subjects, right, which is right up this guy's alley. So the early machinations were leading to his first versions of Compound V. The first one is called V1. So the birth of superhumans in this universe literally comes from Nazi medical torture. That's where it comes from. They're not even getting around that in any way, right? So you don't get the full lab on all the failures on the show, but we do know that there was a lot of failures, and that the earliest iterations of Compound V were not finished products. And, people died painfully. Some people were left to mutilation. There was mental breakdowns out of this, right? So early on, the success rate of Compound V, or the early forms of Compound V, man, they weren't good, right? There's minuscule numbers. So they were deading a lot of people in order to get this system, right? To get this drug Compound V in place. But this is the early beginnings of this God system. From this pile of bodies, you would get this research granted from Hitler to allow him to do this stuff. So they frame it all under like this. And again, you know, World War II is such a big part of, like, almost, it's a lot of comic book stories, especially some of the foundational comic book stories are heavily dependent on World War II, man. That's just what it is. Like, Captain America reads a whole lot easier. But I think, like, Superman was actually developed by two guys who were descendants of the Jews who've gone through the Holocaust. I think this is 1930, because he was developed early on as well. So all these guys come out of, like, ideas about, right, what was going on in World War II, the Nazis, right? And then, you know, so he gets this like system going at Hitler's behest. So now he's rolling. I got a full tank of test subjects in the back, and a lot of ambition and very little empathy. So I got all the makings of like a total, you know, evil mad scientist, right? Which is what he is. Okay. 1949, this is when he meets his lady, man. And let me grab a picture so we all know the lady of whom I'm talking about. The lady of the day. Everybody knows who we're talking about when we're talking about his lady. Where are you at here? Okay. So his lady, of course, is Stormfront. This would be his lady, literally, right? Her name was Clara Rensinger. And she obviously was born in Berlin in 1919. She was raised in Nazi Germany, right? She was fully marinated in Aryan supremacy ideology. And we saw that. She was not even bashful or humble about it in any way, because this is her core. And this is what really brought these two together. Because not only is that his lady, obviously this becomes not just one of his experiments, she is his first successful V compound subject. So she's literally the first real Supe. So the first real Supe is a Nazi, right? Like right off the rip. So we know this about. So this is what he's building this on. Like the first real Supe is a Nazi, right? And what he gives her is she stops aging, right off the bat, right? She gains flight, she gains durability, and she gets energy protection. She's pretty badass, right? She effectively becomes immortal. And she's going to have a couple identities that we know about. First, she's Liberty, and then, of course, she becomes Stormfront. But she may have operated under other names or under other identities that we have no idea about, right? What we do know is that she marries Frederick Vought, and we know that they have a daughter, and their daughter's name is Chloe. And this is like the foundation of this empire, right? This is where it all comes from. So Frederick Vought is revered in this system as the spark plug. He is that. He's the one who got it going on. And you get, you know, immortals, you get ideologically, they're fascists, they're powered by human suffering because they love this, and this is all the brand. And she becomes the Eve of what I'm going to call this pantheon, okay? Now, 1944, things start to get problematic for the Nazis, right? They're losing the war, and they know they're going to lose. How they have Stormfront and they still lose this war, I have no idea, because it didn't seem like there was anybody else out there to fight her. But again, they're writing it historically. This is very important. The Nazis are losing. So what happens is he felt the change in the wind, and like a lot of scientists, he came over to the Americas, right? And some of the other Axis powers took these German scientists, right? We know that they did. That's actually what happened in real life. So he gets taken out of Germany, gets rescued out of Germany, and comes to the Americas. He's smuggled away. And of course, we know, like, they're going to ignore your crimes. They don't give a damn, right? They just want the science, right? So he's given a pardon, even though this guy already has a history of massively torturing and experimenting on humans who had nothing to do with this. He had no idea why they were being tortured and even, wanted it. Through this process, though, he gets his next big accomplishment, which is this charming, dastardly dude you see right here, which, of course, is Soldier Boy. So these are the first two successes in the line. The first two are Stormfront, and then you get on American soil, you get Soldier Boy. And I don't know who's worse. Soldier Boy, this dude's out here. So he instantly becomes a U.S. propaganda against him. And it's kind of funny because we see those parallels, even like the Captain America story. So under Hitler, same guy, under Hitler, he's building gods for fascism. Under Teddy Roosevelt, he's building them for democracy, right? And lucky that was our side, right? That's all we care about. But it's the same serum. It's the same ethics. Everything that goes into what he was developing was already right here, right? So we had everything here. Nothing changed about the morals in any part of it. So now he comes, this is post-war, after World War II. Frederick Vought founds Vought America, okay? So now he has, like of course, when you come here, you have a legitimate front. Vought Industrial, right? International, excuse me. So this is his legitimate defense. This is his legal. They are a pharmaceutical company. So I always assume that they don't operate like a pharmaceutical company, and it's because they were never actually just a pharmaceutical company. This was a subversive device. There was never any intent of pharmaceuticals. They were developing superpower beings from the rip. They didn't just discover or accidentally get into it. This is what they were doing. That was all about owning Compound V, controlling who gets it, managing the narrative around the Supes. This became important. So Stormfront comes to America initially, and she keeps her Nazi ideology. She operates for a time as Liberty in the 70s, and of course, she was hella racist while she was doing it. So she had some lynching style murders that we see like coming up in even season 2, and then she reemerges as Stormfront in the present day. And now she's all about social media and meme. Like, she fully understands it. So her timeline goes from, she's born Clara Rensinger in 1919. Frederick Vought becomes the chief of Dachau. He starts experimenting. By the 40s, she is the first successful Supe. She is the first one. Around that time, Vought, defects to Americas, and later she would come. Later in the 40s, we get Soldier Boy, who's also created. We see that the U.S. funds Vought America, or founds it here in the United States. By the 70s, she's still pretty old. Stormfront is operating as Liberty. Openly racist, right? She's openly racist even back then. Now this is all into the modern times. She's rebranded as Stormfront. She joins the 7. She's trying to resurrect this. So she is really the first stable one. Like, the serum doesn't kill her. She gains persistent, controllable powers, and she stops aging. So all these things are extremely good if you're coming at it from the standpoint of Frederick Vought. Everything is working out. This is exactly what he would have planned for. She has absolutely the mentality that he's into, and that's why he wifed her up. Let's have kids together. She was 100% about that, and she's a Supe at the same time now. So this is everything. So then the next person we have to talk about in this structure here, this pantheon here, is obviously going to be Thomas Godolkin, right? We got to talk about Thomas Godolkin. And he always comes secondary because he is, like, literally, okay? There's a reason that it's Vought Industries and then Godolkin U. They're secondary. And this is the reason, because he's not the Prometheus. He doesn't create it. He doesn't create the divine spark that we're seeing that they would all be after later. He doesn't create it, but he is part of the weaponization. He is the inheritor of it. So his early careers, he enters the story after Compound V already exists. They know this already. He's not a Nazi himself. That was not his mentality. But he's working on this Nazi-derived science, so he's like, whatever. His focus is not ideological. He doesn't care about that part. He's about optimization. So he studies Supes as a system, not as people. And he's the first one who does this. So he's kind of the guy, like, mythically, who writes it all in the doctorate. Like, they created it, they figured out what they could do to it, and now he's the one, or figure out what they could do. He figures out a way to put it in action. He actually starts to be the one who adds, framework and organization in a much bigger way. Because one of the things that at his core, he believes that a lot of these powers are being wasted on people that just flat out don't deserve them. And some of these Supes, like you notice, he has a very, very high bar for Supes that he tolerates, right? If you got a stupid power, he's gonna murk you out. He detests that. At his core, he 100% just is not about that. So by the 50s now, they established God U in the U.S., right? And really, it's a research campus. It's a selection engine for the Supe, because they're going to decide what Supes are actually going to be made in stars. And this is where they really, really compound your conditioning. This is a conditioning environment. This is going to be how they teach, how they start to keep all these people in line, because they're looking for certain types of people. You don't just get through God U. And if you're someone who's too rebellious, like they don't tell these stories, but if you're too rebellious, right, you end up underneath, right, locked away or dead. Because that's how they control the ultimate product that gets out. By the time you're at the 7, you're fully vetted. Now, spoiler alert and disclosure is that Homelander did not come through Godolkin U. He didn't. He's prior to all this, at least his development. So he was created purely in the lab. So so God U, he didn't go that route. So he does. I don't even know how they expected him to have the conditioning, because he kind of doesn't. So this is at God U where they start developing like ranking systems, right? This is a public face of, Supes in general. This is the most public and accessible part, that we see them before they're at the Homelander stage. So what they're doing with these kids with the ranking system, that's going to be key to who actually wants it. They want people who want it. So the idea of a Supe who doesn't care as much about, progressing to the system, they try to get them out of there because they represent a threat. You're most likely to go rogue at some point. And you notice we don't really see too many rogue Supes running around there. Everyone's kind of within some kind of a tether. That's a real way that they move. Everybody is part of this freaking tether. And they're taught that they have to obey. So they're pounding a lot of stuff into these kids at God U. Ranking system, competitive hierarchy, obedience is survival. Your worth is determined by who we got, coming after you. We get rid of you at any time, and they keep that. So they keep that tradition of kind of what they are. Now, by the 60s, he's into Project Odessa. And this is like a God tier obsession where he is obsessed with elite Supes. And most of these Supes, he sees most Supes as utter failures. So he's not being shy about it. He's being rough, rugged, and raw, and just being very definitive. Like, his goal is to engineer God-class beings. I don't want anything else. He doesn't want someone who can make his pecker big, or can just disappear for whatever the stupid stuff you see. Ooh, I got a tail. You're dead. He's not having any of that stuff, right? He doesn't want random powers. He doesn't even like the celebrity hero, which is where he would naturally kind of be at odds with what you're doing. Is he doesn't like that stuff. So going back to what we do know about him is that during Project Odessa, this is the infamous lab disaster, right? And this is the birth of what he would morph into, because they're doing the research, fire breaks out, everybody's getting dead. Now the other researchers had just taken a very, very unstable version of Compound V. He told them not to do it, right? So they do it anyway. Obviously, they create this fire. He's about to die. So he injects himself with the strain of Compound V, hoping to survive through it. Now, this was a strain that was based off of what Stormfront had, which may have been more stable anyway. Faced with it, he's got to do it. So he takes it. We see he gets burnt up severely. So his body becomes totally damaged at this time, but his brain becomes sharper, and that's where he gets all these powers from after facing death, right? So we see he gets telepathic domination, right? Possession powers. So he's able to move. It's ironic how you get those powers when your body's getting burnt up, huh? But anyway, this is what he gets, and this is how he starts to move. So he's moving in a more powerful way. Now he has these avatars who themselves are undetectable because they are not actually Supes. Remember when they were like scanning the blood? They couldn't, right? They weren't finding Compound V in the avatar's body, right? Because he was controlling them. It was just he had direct possession of the body, full possession, multi levels. He can do multiple targets. He's very, very powerful. So he's really like a next level kind of guy. And honestly, man, I don't know if he would have got Homelander, but I think that would have been a real challenge if he wasn't personally a nut. But he is, right? So this is where you get, now we're talking about Cypher, who positions himself as a mentor of the school so he can monitor everything and monitor all the students as he gets to the point where he's like, yeah, anybody whose powers ain't no good, I'm going to take you off the set. Like, you don't deserve to live. So we see that play out, and that is at the core of what this character is. But gives you a broader understanding of how God you works within that system. It is dependent on them schooling and prepping and fine-tuning who's going to be acceptable to potentially move on to the 7, who it may be allowed to work in Black Ops, who they're going to let do your own thing, but you got to tether, because they really don't let too many of these Supes just be wandering free. That's why you don't hear a lot about them, because they have a little bit of control over all of them, and they all want to be in the 7 no matter what. So this is where we're coming with it at. Now, of course, we see at God U that Godolkin dies, but he's baked in this legacy already. So this is going to continue. All the machinations are already there. Okay. So now let's talk about the school itself, because we're not complete unless we can talk about God U. Because God U, this is the proving ground. This is not just an afterthought. This is like a major component of everything going down there is happening at God U, right? Now, this is established again in the 50s. It was a prestige school for Supes. At the core of it, like, you see, like, military, it mirrors, like, military academies, like, religious seminaries. Like, it's really a seminary. If I treat the entire storyline as this big pantheon that they're, creating gods, this is, like, definitely the core of it. This is a seminary where everybody's taught. So they get their hierarchy, they get competition, they get surveillance, they know what it's like to be performing with an eye on you all the time, and they have heavy replacement anxiety. They will do anything. Now, it also doubles as a research firm, and that allows them to data mine, right? They can do long-term experiments on these students. A lot of what we saw was going on underground. So this is a testing ground for, like, compound V refinements. So the students are observed under stress. Like, they want to put the students under stress. They've got all types of mechanisms. They provoked violence. They get fights going on. They promote rivalries. They're pushed towards breakdown or domination. And you can see that. We saw that early with, I think it's Luke, right? You blow out. Either you can accept it, and even Sam, like, he's freaking crazy. That's what's happening to these kids when they get forced into the system, because they want to get anyone out who's not going to be 100% a company man. So this is what we know, and we can kind of see some of the products. Like, we know that Homelander didn't come from the university, right? But the Deep did, and we saw his interaction. We saw what kind of person he is. He absorbed all the messages of God U, right? He's the ultimate frat boy with superpowers, and he conducts himself as such. So the stuff he does with Starlight later, it's not even surprising, right? And so we know who came from there. So we know a lot of them came from there. Homelander did not come from there. Stormfront does not come from there. Remember, she predates all this stuff. Soldier Boy was a wartime experiment. So he kind of went. I don't know if Vanessa Newman went there. Obviously, she didn't. Obviously, Stan kept her separate. Otherwise, her identity would have been known as a Supe. So we see this, like, transition as, like, Gen V obviously is important, because this is a seminary before you really get into it. This is the shaping of the students while they're unsure. They don't know if there actually is a system that's out there. They don't understand the mechanisms of the system. So it's a lot easier for them to walk into it and get caught up. So they learn the obedience. They build all this stuff into it. So by the time they get to Vought or the 7 or the worship, like, the work has already been done. You've been properly vetted. So the people that get through in terms of Vought and God U, these aren't the lightweights. They know, they feel pretty solid about everyone who gets through. So then you get the whole part of it, and the biggest part, obviously, with it is Vought International itself. Now, Vought International, understanding that this comes from a place where this was literally a place where we're just trying to make Nazi super soldiers, to now what they are, which is this multi-armed company, which is even scarier, right? Because they determine who becomes legitimate right off the bat. They determine who did something so bad that they need to be cast out, and who did something where, yeah, whatever, and you can just perform the ritual. So they conduct massive power, right? So they are the definitive state. The church, they are the church because they'll get to define who gets the real power, and it's all from this dude right here. Right? So let's just bring my guy up here. So now we're into his realm. This is where Stan Edgar starts to be as influential and dominant as the other two big figures that we talked about. And he's down the line, but his role is so important because he keeps the structure together. He's the one that gives everyone whatever value that they have. It comes from Stan Edgar at this point. Even though he's kicked out right now, I kind of think he'll be back. But what they do down there is they militarize the gods. They classify any type of violence and erase accountability. They've got deep pockets. And they move very well. They manufacture myth. They control what people think and see about their characters as well as I've ever seen anyone do it before. So their history, post-modern war, it gets founded right in the 50s. And then you get, it's run as a defense contractor pharmaceutical company. Then they're going to take on the entertainment arm and the global belief manager system. Like they have a network of studios that they work with. All this from this apex authority who is Stan Edgar. We see him work up when he's working in Vietnam. We see him kind of working up the ranks, young out in the field to sitting at the very top, right? And he's not the face of Vought. He's never the face of Vought, but he is the will. Like at that point, if I'm gonna say that, Frederick Vought, this was the spark. He was the brain. I think that Godolkin became like the heart of it, right? No, I'm gonna reverse that. I'm gonna say that, yeah. Godolkin was the brain who started to implement all this. Mr. Vought is the heart. He's birthed this through his ideology. Then you get Stan Edgar who comes in here, man, and this guy is like the executor, right? He is like the sharp guy. He's the willpower that gets it done because he moves in ways that those two guys didn't. He moves without his emotion. So his motivation is more tied to the company itself than those two guys ever were. For both of those guys, Godolkin and Vought, the companies were mechanisms that they were fulfilling their other visions. That's not like that for Stan Edgar. His vision is the company. Everything that he does is the company. So he decides like he doesn't do any PR, he doesn't do any of that stuff, but he decides long term. He's looking 100 years out on what is going to be best for this company, and he regulates everything beneath him to the proper stand. So he delegates to his ministries of people, and we're going to talk about them as well. But Vought is a church. So when I talk about the church, this is the making of the heroes. This is the most important part. This is directly under Stan Edgar, right? And where's my girl at? Madeline Stillwell. Let me talk about Madeline Stillwell. May she rest in peace, right? We're sorry that we lost you, Madeline Stillwell, okay? But she worked with Stan Edgar, and this is until her death, right? This was his right hand for a lot of reasons. So they were together on handling the Supes, making them the gods that they were, right? Who counts the mistakes? Which Supe gets forgiven and gets covered up for? Who has to do apologies? Who has to go out and shed some tears? Who has to have public remorse? And who oftentimes has to be like the one who just takes it? So Stillwell is crucial in that and working with Stan. He's lock and step. So she was always going to be his right hand. So if he's like the high priest, she's right there as a high priestess. And she goes so far. I mean, she's not just like the exact, like we see, she gets down, she makes the Supes feel good. Like she has the ability, obviously abilities, right, to connect with them. Up until Homelander decided to laser blast her eyes out of her head, she had good control over everyone. She knew how to talk to all of them. And she particularly had what Homelander was looking for, and we cannot blame him for that. He is kind of a man, right? The other part of Vought is that they operate as a state agency. They're negotiating with the government as well, right? Trying to get Supes in the military. And that also falls under these two, under Stan and Madeline. Rest in peace, Madeline, right? So they really handle that. We saw them in meetings with the presidents, in meeting with political candidates. So they're the ones who are putting them into the military, and it just extends their control. Obviously, they sell Supes to the military. They frame gods as national security. It becomes us versus them. They classify the violence, and they, remove any legal accountability. They make sure whatever these guys do, like I'm looking at you, Black Noir, anything that you guys do, even when you go crazy and just start killing a bunch of people, they figure out a way to kind of talk through it, right? To get through it. That's still under the control of these two people here. Then we get to the last arm of Vought itself, and this is the media. And this is the arm that is really working on the public full time. They're doing it with movies, they're doing it with shows, they're doing it with action figures. This is what we see that is basically run by man, one of my favorites here obviously is Ashley Barrett, right? This is, oh, come on, Ashley here. Let me grab an image of Ashley here if I can get one. Ashley is obviously like insanely crazy herself, right? Ashley is a product, like she got into Vought and she really likes working down there at Vought. So she doesn't back off of anything. Although she's terrified all the time, right? She's absolutely terrified. She understands that Homelander and every single one of them is an absolute killer. So I can't really give her a big pass, but I do have to understand, like, yeah, that's what it is, right? When she does all the immoral stuff that she does, it's under the name of, I have to, kind of in a way, even though she gets an opportunity to escape. And she doesn't have, because the structure's broken down, because she doesn't have Stan, who got arrested, because Homelander killed Madeline, she doesn't have any buffer. So it's her and Homelander. So she's not able to make any decisions. She literally has to just work with what he gives her. She has to spin the narratives. She has to put out fires here and there. She's the one who got my man when they took the heart out of what was his name, the Blue Falcon, Blue Hawk, and gave it to A-Train. Right? She's behind that. She does all the spin, but she doesn't, and she gives the numbers to Homelander. She keeps him updated on what the ranking, or no, not the ranking system, but the Q rating, whatever that is. She gives him all the updates, but she has zero authority, right? She has zero authority to make any type of decisions. And you'd see when it got hot, she's just as likely to be killed off as anyone else, right? So these are the arms that got us around Vought. There's some big arms there. There are like 4 or 5 really key figures, at least understanding the hierarchy of what's going down there at Vought Industries and and God U. So I think I've got through that for you guys pretty well. But again, hit me up in the comment sections. I'm gonna dip out now. I just wanted to kind of get in before we got into the new season, just to make sure, man. I really went over exactly what the series was really all about, like, and to be able to do that and not feel the need to talk about any of the Supes, man, it's a big thing. I mean, outside of a few mentions, this is really where the big, like the power brokers really dwell, like the foundation of it. So I'm looking forward to the new season. I always ask you guys to hit that like and subscribe. Join me at the channel. I'm going to dip out of here now, but I'll be back with some mythology stories for you guys later on tonight for your late night mythology feed.